All right, got a message from Kat. Need some help on a Rails project. Looks like trying to create a list associated with a user, but it seems like the user doesn't exist even though I'm logged in. Excellent, we have a portfolio project. She thinks maybe there's something wrong with her database. Maybe it's the migrations. It's always good when we have a GitHub repository to work with. We will put this, now we'll put it in here. Let me clone the repository and take a look. What did she call it? Rails Portfolio Project. Okay. Let's just go ahead and bundle. Sus. All right, and let's just take a look. Get a new window. Migrations. Forgot to migrate. Yeah, that's not helpful. That's not it either. There we go. Now let's start up the server again. All right, we're on Rails. Let me try to make a user. We'll do GB, create. All right. Permitted false. What is false? Something is not permitted in our action controller. Under the sign up action, around line 18. I know Avi does this. I'm guessing you're doing a raise error here. Let's look. App controller. I'm guessing it's really a user controller, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm no good with this. I do better with a pry. I like to be able to interact with it a little bit. Maybe I had more experience. Those raises would do more for me. So I'm going to try this again. I'm not sure if I need to start and stop the server or not. All right, let's sign up again. No, good. So now we're in the pry. Let me just look at user.all. So we definitely did not create a user because I have an empty array as my return. So let's look at the user instance variable. We have no ID, which means we didn't save. If I call user.save, so it tries to save, and then it rolls back the transaction. So if I do user.errors, this is a list of all of the errors. So password can't be blank and password digest can't be blank. So we're having some kind of an issue with the password. So this makes me wonder, so I'm going to check to see that the model has secure password and that the migration is using the password digest, right? Here she has password digest and the model user secure password, okay? All right. And the migration, let's look in the schema, user password digest. So that all looks good to me. Okay, so let's look at params. Are we not getting the param? We have a password. Ah. Yep. Let Let me look in the view real quick. I think I have an idea of what we're doing. I think we are sending a password, but we are only permitting a password digest. I think these need to match up. This password and this password digest need to read the same thing. Let me just look into the view real quick. New. Yeah, so we're submitting password, exactly like what we have in our param. So that is the key, but in our controller, we're only permitting a key of password digest. So we can change this to password, I think, or we can change the other one to password digest so that if this was password digest, it would be fine, I think, or if this is password, that should be fine, I think. So let's exit this pry and go back into the browser. I'm not logged in. That's a lie. All right, and let's sign up again. We will create GB one more time, hopefully. Go back into our pry, at user. My user has an ID now. That's great. And if I do user.all, I actually have a user. So I was able to save this user. So that's one part of it, but she was talking about wanting to create a list associated with a user. So now we can actually create a user that is saved to the database that will persist. Let's make sure that we can actually create a list now while we're here. So exit this pry, and I'm going to take that out so it doesn't run again. I don't need it anymore. And let's look at lists. Oops. Create new list. Title. This isn't the first list application. Test list. Status, okay. Well, it's probably for like completed or engaged. Cool. Some user must exist. So that's a pretty explicit error. This is probably where this comment comes from. The user doesn't exist. That's what this says. But I don't know why, so I'm going to put a pry into the list controller. I'm going to go ahead and just comment this out, and below the save, I'm going to put a pry. And I don't know that it matters where we put this pry. I like to put it below the save, because I think that when we try to save it, that's when we'll get errors associated with the @list. So after it tries to save, I should be able to just call @list.errors and see what our problems are. So let me go back to, can I do list new? Cool. Routes are set up well. All right, so call it list 2 and yes. Okay, now we're in the pry. So if I do @list, you see it didn't get an ID, which means it did not save. @list.errors. So the user must exist. So do I have a @user? I don't. That's not a problem. Do I have a current user? That's a typical way that is the way we're taught to work with users. Instead of passing the ID around, we have a helper method. And she does have the helper method. So that's really good. And it's the right it's the right one. It found me. So the issue then, let's look at our params. So we have title and status, and that is it, is title and status. So it seems like we need a user, right? The list controller, when it creates, we are passing in just the params. And we need a user. Let's look at this schema one more time. So as of right now, a list needs to have a user. So if we're only passing in the params, and the params do not include a user, we'll never be able to create a user this way. Let me just see, can I create a list like this? list. Actually, if I do at list.user, that should be no, okay? And if I say at list.user equals current user, I think that should work. Hey, now it worked. So at list.all, didn't save it. At list.save, commit transaction true. So now I can do list.all. There it is. And if I exit the pry and go back into the browser, I should see my list to status yes. So just to kind of recap what we did. Again, I'm no good with raising errors. I like to get in a pry where I can check my assumptions and see what values are. So all we did in the user's controller is change password digest to password so it matches the params being sent to us from our view. And in the list controller, we didn't do anything yet, but what I was able to do in the pry was at list.user equals current user. And then when it saves, it would run. So let me just verify that works without the pry. How many pries do I need? Oh, she had a pry. That's cool. All right. Let's just go ahead and stop and start the server. I'll create a new user, create a new list for that user, and just to prove out that these changes work. So we will sign up. Guy. I don't need a save for this. You're logged in, create a new list. GB list, status, great. Yep. So I was able to make a user and create a list, and the list should be associated with this user as we saw in the pry. All right. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Happy coding.